Welcome everyone. Allow me to introduce you to Berlin-based Icelandic producer Volruptus. Volruptus has been pretty active in the electro scene over the last 5 or so years with releases on Sweaty Records, Trip Records, and most consistently on BBB Records. Fairly sure I got the right amount of B's there. A most notable maybe contribution to the scene was his album First Contact on Bjarki's label. We will be going into depth into these various topics in just a short while. However, for the time being, I'd like to just outline maybe the foundations for the discussion. So today we're going to be discussing the role of retro aesthetics within electro and electronic music as a whole, particularly focusing on the use of vintage drum machines such as the Roland TR-808. Now, while the conversation will be technical at certain points, it is aimed to be accessible to most people.
Yeah, cool, I like that.
Without further ado, I think we should probably just start with possibly the most simple question there is. How are you?
I'm good. I feel good. Yeah. It's my first time doing a video interview. I've done a few radio ones, but I feel fine.
And how has Corona impacted your life since?
There's no gigs. But I made a lot of music, lots and lots of music, and I feel like I'm progressing. So.
And do you feel that, in contrast to before Corona, it's allowed you to focus more on the actual music and less on the actual gigs and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you just come back from a show, day after, I usually don't open up the programs or start making music for at least a day. Sometimes that turns into 2, and I unplug my interface and have to plug it all again, and retired after traveling and partying, and if sometimes you find yourself like not plugging it for a few days. The muse isn't there always with you, not every day. So yeah, but yeah, when if you really only have a choice between making music and watching TV or something, it should be an easy choice. Usually it is, but not always.
Yeah. And do you want to maybe, I suppose not everyone's going to be entirely up to scratch with kind of your work. Do you want to maybe give a brief background on what you kind of do, maybe from a conceptual perspective and also maybe a brief technical perspective?
Yeah. I would say like the concept and the technical kind of go hand in hand. There's synergy. When I start making a tune, I don't really have a tune in mind. I don't have a particular genre or direction in mind. I usually just start, and I often start by doing some technical experiments, and then I just follow kind of my hands to sounds and my ears to sounds that I like, rather than chasing a sound. So the more technical doors I open, I feel like more creative doors open too, especially with this workflow, I guess. I guess, I love fantasy, and I guess I reflect that bit in the titles and themes. But yeah, it's just I just start doing stuff and I see what happens, really.
And how long has it been since you started?
I started making music, I think around 2007 or 2008.
Okay.
I was just chucking together like stuff in GarageBand as a kid. That was really fun. Mostly as a joke at first, and then I was making like sampling stuff, making like instrumental hip hop beats and like some electronic stuff, breakbeat stuff. Yeah, but way back. Yeah.
And how is there a particular meaning, say, to the name Volruptus?
It can mean whatever you want it to mean. It kind of has a meaning, but it's a bit of a secret.
Okay, good to know.
Or, you know, it can mean whatever you want it to mean.
One thing that maybe springs to mind is the amount of volcanoes in Iceland and
it sounds like volcano and eruption.
Eruption, yeah.
But it sounds like a lot of other things too. And it can mean whatever you want it to mean. But I think it just sounds cool. And it's like cool letters. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, coming with a graffiti tag or something. It's just sometimes, I mean, you know, you can have meaning to it, but it's not really the main thing. It's just if you just accept the word as the word, and then the sounds of it give you a feeling, I guess.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Open to whatever people want to think themselves. But would you say there was any real driving factors for you to getting into music, or did you just were you just interested in technology or interested in making sounds?
I was definitely interested in music. I got a musical upbringing, and the fact that I could so easily do it myself, like just with a laptop, I guess was definitely you know, when I realized that, I didn't even know that. And at boredom, I think. And, you know, where I grew up, the weather wasn't always great, so to speak. So, you know, you have to have, you spend a lot of time indoors. And, yeah, it's a pretty good indoor activity, I would say.
For sure, yeah.
A really good one.
Was there anything when you were getting started in making music, you mentioned that you were making kind of instrumental hip-hop beats. Was there a point where you had more of a defined direction where you wanted to go and you knew kind of what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. But I would still always, like, I would never get frustrated if I, you know, because if I had something in mind, probably wouldn't get exactly what I had in mind, or not even close. But that's okay. I think, like, also I was, you know, sometimes I'd flip the samples a lot, but oftentimes I would just, you know, I was always like digging in for records with samples and stuff, and yeah, it was really sample based. Sometimes I, you know, did some more complex things to them, but yeah. And I think at some point I got myself personally bored of that, or I felt like, I mean, I remember my mom saying like, you know, she sometimes with some classic tracks I was listening to, that's just the best part from this like funk song, and I'm like, yeah, that's the brilliant part, and then you make it into a totally different song, but it's still, I felt like when I'm making music like that, that I wish I had made the melody also. You know, I think this is, you know, so I've sometimes started thinking that like I put together a bunch of stuff and it's a new song, but I felt like I wish though I had actually written all this stuff. But I mean, and that's, I think like electronic music is like, if you want to play all the instruments, it's pretty hard to do that with acoustic sounds. So if you want acoustic whole band, you either have to have tons of money and know how to play all the instruments, or just sample stuff. And you can do crazy things, I guess. I'm going off on a tangent about sampling and yeah, on my old productions.
What was, say, of course, your current sound is quite dark, kind of operates between the lines of electro, techno.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if I, like I say, I just want to make, you know, something, and I see where it leads me, like just what happens, kind of.
One thing maybe in detail would be, was there any particular element or aspect within your music that you particularly focused on, say drums, or say certain bass lines or harmony, melody? Was there anything you really were like, that's gonna be my way of?
Yeah, I love dancing, so the rhythm section is really important to me. I mean, I guess I usually start there. I usually start with drums and bass. Sometimes I start with bass because I just want to play with my synth, you know. And sometimes, once in a while, I start with like chords. I like, you know, you gotta switch it up because I hate the feeling when I'm starting a new track and I'm just starting like a kick pattern and drums and I feel like I feel like I'm not doing anything new right now. So sometimes I start with like a synth sound because I feel it. I can feel original faster. I can feel creative faster, I think. But I don't know. It just depends.
So if you're saying you can feel original faster, do you think it's easier to sound original using melodies, harmonies, certain elements of sound design outside of drums? Do you think it's harder maybe within drums to sound original?
No, maybe it's just personal. Maybe it's because I've managed over the years to get like this big system and stuff and I really know how it all works. So, but I mean, yeah, I've sometimes started like a tune and I feel like, oh, but you know, I have some obsession with being original, but I still don't want to do some, you know, wacky shit that doesn't sound great just to be original. So it's just a bit of a, yeah. But I mean, I guess no matter how much you try, you'll sound similar to this, and you can always say it sounds like this mixed with that or whatever.
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Definitely a topic for just a short while. But just going back in terms of drums, how important do you think it is in terms of dance music, electronic music?
I guess the drums are probably the most important. I feel like I feel like a beat, the drums like move you, right? And I like the melody or the chords or whatever like touches you. And if you get them both to really have like good synergy, I think that like grips you and like that gets people really dancing. When you've got like when you get intensity as an emotion from the chords or something over really intense beats, you know, that's how you make bangers, I guess. But I guess that's easier said than done.
In terms of originality, one thing that strikes me to be is the amount of use of modular you use. Do you want to maybe somewhat elaborate on?
I mean, I don't have like a gigantic system. It's got a bit bigger recently, but it's not that big. I recommend anyone who's wants analog gear to like get into just like building because it's like a, you know, if you it gets exponentially better the more you add to it, and it can take a long time and it's pretty fucking expensive. You can get by with like DIY stuff. I don't really do that much. I have to be honest. Yeah, no, I don't do the DIY like gear really at all. I wish I did. I should. The thing is that it's, I guess like it's quite common. There's a lot of people who buy modulars and they maybe don't have a great approach to begin with, and then, you know, don't feel inspired and sell all their gear. And I mean, I'm happy to buy it in the near future when a lot of used gear is gonna flood the market. No, but I wish. No, but it's. I mean, I just send out sequences from the computer. I don't use a lot of sequencers. I mean, that would be very expensive too. And buying like the right mix of modules can get you a really powerful synth for, you know, a fair price, really. Like, it doesn't always have to be that much more expensive. But then again, analog gear is just very expensive, unfortunately. And I mean, I love digital. Most of my work happens in the computer, I guess, and I have some digital synths and stuff. But there is like, I feel sometimes if a track is, you know, only digital, it can be great. Lots of tracks I love. But, you know, I feel like once you get just one analog filter into the sound somewhere, you kind of notice it in contrast. You know, no matter what you emulate, I guess. I mean, I guess you can fool people with some sounds, for sure, totally. Fool probably everybody with a really good emulation, but you know, I don't know. It's just when you're making music, you don't want to spend your time trying to emulate something very precisely that you could just do pretty quickly. You just invested a bit of money, I guess.
Do you think it's possible in the future then, with more technology,
guess,
level?
I guess you could get it now quickly, probably with just presets. I don't know. But yeah, I use, mostly digital effects and stuff, or almost only.
And would you say there was a certain attraction to modular that got you really into it in the first place?
Yeah, I just have this kind of obsession with doing everything from the ground up. That kind of slows down the process. I really like things that let you kind of get under the hood and mess with individual parts and because there's so many things you can do with modular you cannot do with any synth on the market. Whole synth engine synthesis techniques, and I don't understand, especially the bigger companies, why I haven't made certain types of synths. And there's just a lot of things that can be done there that sure you probably can't do digitally, but it'll just be much more time consuming, to be honest. Do exactly the same what they do modulars. And it just can sound really cool. And also it's gonna give you a very individual sound, because probably no one's gonna have exactly the same modules as you in your synth voice. So if you choose, not too few but not too many modules, and just choose them carefully to your preference and research what you want to buy, and it's gonna be a very personal instrument, I guess.
And how slowly would you say you took it initially in terms of building it?
I guess that just depends on how much money you have. I had some money in my hands many years ago. I think it was 2013 I got into modular, and I bought a bunch of modules then, but I've slowly added into them, and now it's a pretty powerful system. But yeah, adding to it since 2013. It's cool.
Yeah, and I would say a notable thing where you can see what you're doing in your artistic practice would be your boiler room, the machines, the back to back to back to back. Four back to backs, I think it is, isn't it?
The first boiler room thing.
The boiler room machines. I think it's you.
Yeah, we did the hard dance, and we did one before. That was fun. And it gets a bit hectic. It's it's a lot. That's the really fun project, 3D Dancer. Just because we're basically just jamming on stage, but that's great if you have a crowd, you'll make some really aggressive stuff. And when you do it for a very extended period of time, you get these magic moments that wouldn't happen in a planned, not in planned music making.
Yeah, so I suppose that kind of shows that maybe modular, part of the main attraction why it's become really popular is the kind of unpredictability of it. Do you think?
Sure. I guess there's also just the only companies right now I feel that are pushing analog sound design at all are in the Eurorack modular realm. I feel like the old giants, and they're kind of just rehashing their old gear. And it's great. It's affordable now. I've bought some stuff like that. It's great, but I feel like they're kind of missing out on just experimenting and keep moving forward with analog sound design or digital. There's always been, I guess, more, within plugins and so on, more progression there. But I feel like all the progression in the technical realm is happening in the Eurorack. There's so many companies now, and these are all just very small, usually, most of these companies. Which is very interesting. I guess to make things worse for people who maybe spend too much money on this like too quickly, is that like a company will make a module, and you don't know how many they're gonna make. Maybe it's just 300. It's like the record, kind of, you know. Maybe it's just a few hundred modules, and you have to buy them before someone else does. So it's, but you know, there's always gonna be more, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it kind of leads on to the next kind of maybe section or topic regarding these synth companies such as Roland. Let's just put example, the 808. How important do you think it is in music, personally?
Oh, I mean, really, I think without the 808, music today would be very different. And I'm confident that it's better with, you know, with the 808. Yeah, like, I mean, the 808 is just like an instant classic. And something magical happened when I made that one, because it does sound, you know, I would say better than pretty much every drum machine. I would say, personally, I think. Maybe the 909, I really like the 909 sounds too, but it's really cool. But I feel like if you wanna make a great track with the 808, it has to be like insanely good, because if you make a pretty good track and it's got like unprocessed, if it's unprocessed 808, there's just so many others like it, even though it's completely original. There's just this one thing that will like make you feel like you've heard it or something. And some people might like that. Maybe you know, I've definitely had my thing for just listening to like genres, like, and just liking everything that's decent within that genre, and just and then at some point I get bored. I've got such ADHD, I guess, and then I start listening to different stuff, and the ones that stay with me are always like the most unique ones, I guess, or the ones that like yeah. So I think 808 has done like incredible things for music, but today I think now it's so accessible to make your own sounds, because you know, most people are making music on laptops, and that's all you need to make your own sounds. That it's hard, it's tricky, and you instantly get a great sounding drums if you use the 808. That's very alluring. And it's really hard to make completely your own sounds, but you could source them from like obscure places, I guess. But then, you know, in the end, is it good? So it's pretty. It's yeah. It's hard.
Is the 808, metaphorically speaking, is it the paintbrush or is it an accessory? Is it necessary for it to be there, or would it have been anyway?
I think that kind of sequencer and that kind of drum machine would always have been, no matter what would have happened. No, I think yeah. I mean, it's just a tool to make beats.
In terms of, if you contrast like new technology, like Electron, some of the stuff that they say the analog rhythm can do, why is it that like the 808 is still pretty universally accepted as the staple?
Yeah, it's because they nailed it. They nailed it. But the thing is that even if, you know, let's just say that for, you know, someone's aesthetic preferences, the 808 is just the best drum machine that can, like, and the best drum sounds that can ever be made. You still wouldn't want every, you know, track to have it, but you'd still want a lot of them, I guess, to have it. But then again, you know, some tracks have like blown my mind just by the snare, and it's like totally weird. It's a snare that wouldn't work in almost any other track. You know, like Hydro Theory by Drexia, the snare. I mean, you know, it gets me every time. Or ARPANET, Illuminated Displays. The snare there is just like, I flinch every time I have it in headphones. It's like I'm never expecting it. It gets me every time. But and I feel like, you know, sometimes you need a really wacky drum sound, and you just have to make it. And I know I could make all my music faster if I had drum machines. I don't use drum machines. But what I do though, I can just say my workflow is like this. I make a patch that creates a kick sound, and then I record 100 kick sounds, and I change all the parameters and stuff, and I change it, and some of them are really bad. And usually I layer stuff, and I layer like 4 different snare sounds, and I spend a bit of time on it. But I've done it so often, I guess I can do it pretty fast now. I feel like it's worth it. I feel like and everyone's doing it anyway, with drum machine sounds, like doing all the effects and EQing or whatnot, distortion. But if you just add like another step before that, and if like I make a bunch of snare sounds and they're not like as perfect as the like the 808 snare or 909 snare. But if I put a few of them together, I feel like it's good. And I know I've put out tracks with the not so great sounding drums, but I think I'm getting there. And it's just a long process, I guess, to do drums from scratch that sound like that sound that can compete with these famous drum machines.
And the way you were explaining your workflow, so you have your modular, you make a patch and then you record and then you sample it. What do you think the role of samplers and even DAWs are in how dominant 808s are in music?
Yeah, like I think pretty much everyone has like an 808 somewhere in their sidebar folder thing now, somewhere. And like you can do so much to the sound. You can make it unrecognizable. But I feel like, then if you make it unrecognizable, why did you start with it to begin with? You beef up the 808 with like the right distortion or whatever, depending on what track you're making. But to be honest, I've danced to tons of tracks with 808, and I love a lot of tracks with 808. But it's a bit played out, I think now. I think if electro is going to be the sound of the future or whatever, then I think using like 80s drum sounds is, they're pretty timeless, but everything that's timeless is only timeless for a few decades, right? It's like
I like the language you're speaking right now. So I would just say, will it be dethroned ever?
By another drum machine? I don't know. Maybe not. Probably though. Probably already has, and we just don't know. But in popularity, I don't know. Probably not. I don't think a drum machine is ever going to have the same impact on culture, because now there's just so many of them, and I don't think there's going to be a whole kind of sound. I wouldn't credit one drum machine for a whole genre, but I don't think there is any one piece of gear ever going to have influence like in the past, like the 303, for example, or the 808 or the 909, because I think there's so much more gear out there now, and things to do in the computer. So you don't need a drum machine. So when you needed a drum machine to get electronic beats, that was the only way to do it. Of course, the best drum machine was going to have a huge impact on the whole evolution of the dance music.
And do you think maybe Ableton, for example, do you think they should really be focusing on maybe going into uncharted territory within sound that people think is currently not possible, or is not at least possible to the consumer at the moment? Do you think maybe that's their best way in terms of getting there?
I think the tool should be, should always get better and always advance. But you mean, like, if I'm opening Ableton for the first time, I don't want it to feel too perplexing. And I think, I guess they should definitely try to make it not too convoluted and stuff like that. And I've done a great job, and it's pretty good. But still have as many options as possible. Maybe, just the way things are displayed and organized there is the key factor. I think you can have very complex engines that are still very user-friendly. And I've seen that in gear and in DAWs and stuff.
And so, would you say, if you had to maybe pick or at least predict, which is probably the more likely to be the successor in, say, ingenuity within music, do you think it would be within software, or do you think it would be within, say, modular or?
I mean, the originality in modular is like depending on how you patch it. And when you patch it, you become the programmer. And I feel like that's also the direction now, like, with Macs and stuff like that, that if you really want to program stuff yourself, you can do it, and it's gotten easier than it was. And I think you can choose all, like, tiers of, like, I don't know, or all levels of, like, if you just want to use presets, go ahead. If you want to, emulate classic synths, and if you want to, you can go at any level. I think in Reactor you can start engineering your own filters and stuff. So I feel like it's great that everything is open. Like you can tinker with the tiniest details, or like the most, or not, or just start jamming out with presets.
Cool. So I would say, in somewhat connection to the 808 and the 909, these kind of instrumental machines in dance music, I suppose it makes sense to maybe address the theme of retro kind of aesthetics.
Oh yeah, I guess.
How do you think it's important in electro and all electronic music?
I mean, I think any music that any genre like really blows up and becomes huge will always like stay. Even its original sound will always be like it will have some sort of nostalgic power. And like if you want to make, like, what was it, a few years ago, a lot of people started making like this kind of 80s like Italo. It became like really popular again. I mean, I bet there's definitely a lot of producers making it the entire time, like never stopped. But I mean, I feel like, with the 808, for example, I feel like you kind of get that when you use the cowbell. People are like, hey, yeah, that sound, everyone will recognize it. So, and that hasn't that's a sound that is really cool, but hasn't aged as well as the other ones, because it's very, very easily recognized by anybody, people who don't know drum machines. You'll remember that sound when you hear it again.
So are you saying, if, say, for example, something is more recognizable, it means that it's maybe less contemporary because it can't blend in with the modern day synthesis?
Yeah, like the 808 are like perfect sounds that don't necessarily steal the show. You can still add stuff, but you could make like a really weird snare that's so strange or whatever that it kind of steals the show. And if everyone had that snare, people would stop using the drum machine immediately. You have to have a great snare that's still not too bizarre, I guess. And I guess that's if something is very strange, you can't just do it over and over.
And so would you say, in terms of like retro aesthetics, is it something that that you do within your music, or do you aim to not do it?
No, I aim not to, but like I don't think too much about Is it futuristic or retro? I think with what just I like in general, it's usually going to be more futuristic than retro. I mean, I guess, yeah. But I know, I never know. Sometimes I made songs that could just as well be old, or very old. I don't know.
Would you say it's possibly unavoidable for it to be retro because you're in, like, you grew up listening to all these types of genres and stuff like that? It's almost impossible to not.
Yeah, I've given it some thought. Like, you feel like now, because especially in like that, all the main branches were grown on this branch in the 90s or whatever, and now all the small branches have already grown too, and everybody has made all the different drum patterns, and people have experimented with all the different synth engines. But there's one thing I think that has not been experimented with a lot, and I've just started experimenting with it recently for the last few months, is like microtonal stuff. So like I feel like of course not all the beats have been programmed, and there's all these crazy possibilities, and but does it sound good? That's always like, I could make all these totally unique polyrhythms that sound awful. It's hard to pull it off. But I think with experimenting, and there's a few producers who've done it, and they're really big names. And I think if that, and I think right now actually I saw something, some program and that's making it a lot more user-friendly, microtonal stuff. And I think that's gonna be like in the near future, like a big thing. Because I myself got into it recently, but I've seen that it's like clearly more available now than ever, more easy.
Do you want to maybe clarify just for viewers, maybe basically what it is?
So it's like not using the 12-tone scale of the piano. So the scale we use now was created by Johann Sebastian Bach, and it's really clever, like to take the just tonation, or I think, and make it totally chromatic. So each step is the same. But the problem with it is that, for example, the fifth isn't perfectly 3/2, the mathematical ratio. So it's almost there, but you have a lot of other beautiful intervals that just aren't available to you on the Western scale, and you can make your own scales, and and there's thousands of scales out there to use, and again the trick is to make it sound good. Like the 12-tone equal temperament scale is just what we're used to. It's pretty easy to work with, even though but I think there's a lot of uncharted territory still. In terms of music, that's good. In terms of music, that's good. I mean, there's endless uncharted territory and bad sounding stuff. But
so, do you think this is maybe good news for, say, Serge or Buchla in terms of this uncharted territory in between these notes on the chromatic scale?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably like gonna have more influence digital, because it's gonna be more, and just in all gear. I think they're trying to. There's some. I think I don't remember any of these names, but there was some foundation or something that's trying to push for more accessibility to this in like synths on the market, and I think they started supporting stuff like this in the newest Ableton and stuff. So I think there's going to be a very large, like a lot of microtonal electronic music in the near future, because of what I've been noticing in the like realm of the tools progressing or becoming more accessible, at least. I mean, Aphex Twin has been doing this for decades, and many producers, but I guess it was always like probably much more difficult to get into back then, much more of a secret.
So, I mean, what do you think, if Aphex was doing this back then, what role do you think maybe, I don't know, genre purist people who like gatekeepers that really maybe, do you think they predict, or sorry, they affect the original output that is?
I don't believe much in, like, I'm willing to share my production secrets. I mean, I don't go out and say, hey, look at me, this is how I do it. But if someone asks, I'm totally willing to. And I think more people like share tips and like ideas and inspiration, the better music gets. So I think gatekeeping in general is bad, but I don't know, that's just my opinion.
Within electro, you were speaking about something within futurism. Like, how important do you think it is to electro, the idea, the theme of futurism?
What even is electro? I mean, I wouldn't even call all of my tracks. I sometimes describe it, if people want to know what kind of music I make, as some sort of electro, because that's what it is most of the time. But yeah, I want to make some stuff that sounds futuristic because I just don't want it to sound old. So I think if you try as hard as you can to be original while still trying to maintain an acceptable aesthetic or whatever, or something that's like still very good. It's really hard, and but then you will by default have the sound of the future.
Yeah,
you did something new.
Yeah.
So I think that having that as like some sort of motto for a whole genre is like then it would have to progress so fast that or I don't know, it's but yeah, like electronic sounds make us think of the future still, or maybe it makes us just think of modern times because we're already living in the future, kind of, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, you beat me to it already by already saying it before, but do you think there is a contradiction there that, say, genres like electro, techno are trying to recreate the past when their kind of main theme would be futurism, to sound like the future? Is there a contradiction there?
I guess they wanted to sound futuristic to begin with, and now people are chasing that sound. But yeah, I think it just if you try to go uncharted territories in like the kind of technical realm, then you will by default sound more futuristic. If you do something that's not been done.
But do you think the overarching theme is necessary for the music? Do you think it wouldn't be the same without it? Do you think the music would still be futuristic without, say, overarching themes of, say, like futurism, say, like Drexia is like Afrofuturism? Do you think it needs that? Or do you think it can be its own entity?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's just so different to each person how they make music and what inspires them. And I feel like all approaches are yield results. So I sometimes would have a theme when I start to try, or like an idea, or I guess just how you are in that moment is just going to determine a lot of how the tune evolves or whatever. But Drexia is not just, it's the ocean. That's the main theme, as they all sound like the ocean, or I make this. Like if they would have some of these tracks would have a smell, it would smell like the ocean, or you feel like you're under pressure in this deep sea. It's cool. It's really cool. I've thought about this sometimes. What would the song smell like? And maybe I'd want to make a song that smells like something. It would probably be pretty tricky, and but yeah, having this the theme, yeah, could be great. I don't do that very often. Maybe I should, but have a theme from the start. But yeah, I like to just kind of play my instruments, play with my stuff, and see where it goes.
And from a listener perspective, maybe, do you value these type of overarching stories in the background, or kind of subtle hints and stuff like that?
That's cool. I think it's for me personally, I would always just try to do it afterwards. Just make tons of tracks and I think, hey, these 4, they all remind me of, I could make this a theme. These 4 have something in common, and I had to find out what is it that they have in common. That's kind of what I've been doing recently. Like I've made a bunch of tracks and I want to put out like a few EPs with a theme.
Do you think maybe it could tie maybe a narrative to the music?
Yeah.
It helps bind it together, perhaps.
Yeah, and maybe even like gives, maybe even a track you didn't like too much at first listen, but if you've built up a theme around, the album, and once you reach that track, it makes sense to you.
Mm.
That can also, open your ears, so to speak, to stuff you maybe, without the theme you wouldn't understand, and with the theme you understand it.
Do you think the theme of futurism has the same impact or punch now than it did 40 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, the future is always like this unknown, what's going to happen. And everyone has their own ideas. So I guess that's why it's probably pretty fruitful kind of inspiration to be, I'm going to make a song that sounds like a song from 10 years or 20 years in the future, or 50 years in the future. Of course you're never going to do that. People, you can't predict the future. And but maybe that's why, because everyone gives it their own twist, and maybe that's why it's such a good theme, I guess, for creativity. I love sci-fi and stuff like that, so because it's just so many possibilities.
So would you say, of course you were saying that you wouldn't classify your music as electro, but do you think the term electro is important?
Sure. Yeah. It's funny how often people ask what kind of music do you like, and you say electro, and I think it's just all electronic music, and it's still and I remember for a few years there was every time you said, when people asked what kind of music you like and you would maybe say electro, they would think you're saying there was electro house. I remember that also. So it's strange how electro has never broken really to the mainstream, and when it does, it kind of by default isn't electro anymore. I feel like when I guess you could argue there were some pop songs that basically were electro tracks with pop lyrics and progressions, but I feel like it loses some of it. It's hard for you to still call it electro. I guess you could say that about techno, and you could say that about a lot of stuff, but a lot of really kind of manufactured regurgitation of underground music into the mainstream, often from dance music, it still often keeps the label for some reason, but I feel like it's the label electro doesn't stay once you kind of put it through you run it through the machine, so to speak. I guess that's a great thing. That's a good thing. But I guess in some sense maybe that's gatekeeping, because I feel like huge names from the underground, which doesn't really happen so much anymore, right? Because of, I don't know, if you compare to some decades in the 90s, or underground music, the biggest artists in that scene were to some degree mainstream. There was much more gradient, and I feel like the huge artists, let's say Prodigy, they introduced so many kids around the planet to breakbeat, and I think that's really important, and yeah. But and I guess there's definitely like tons of pop music based on electro.
How far do you think one can go in pushing these kind of conventions within electro before it's not electro?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, it doesn't matter when it is electro or not, because I feel like if I put the music in a box, then I want to push the boundaries of this box. Why do I need the box? And I guess like whenever you hear a track, you can always think like, well, this is kind of breakbeat meets, whatever. You can always retroactively give it a label. But I think a lot of stuff now is some sort of complex blend of older of classic genres, and I think that's a great thing, and I wish that the term EDM wouldn't have been hijacked by like EDM, because it just sounds like if you just hear this electronic dance music, it would be a great umbrella term for the music I like, but unfortunately that's not what it means today. And I feel like the best parties is where the sets and the stuff, there's like it's not too focused on one sound, and because I feel like also the generation with like the internet and like you didn't have to let's say I want to get into some underground music and there's no internet, and am I gonna get really into two different genres, or am I gonna just kind of stick with one and meet that crowd and find those records and those CDs? But with the internet, it was just like, I was torrenting like crazy as a kid in Reykjavik and just got all the music, and and I feel like to move, I think it's great to just like kind of mix together different ideas.
So do you think maybe right now, in today, because we've already had these genres, electro, techno, everything, do you think there's a higher demand for people who are just making general music that maybe you can classify it techno, maybe you can classify it electro?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah. It's if you wanna like find a certain type of music you wanna listen to, the labels are great. It's good to have them, these like genres. But I think for making music, there, I think a lot of people don't explore their full potential because they put themselves in a box, and they want to tick boxes on like a list of what that kind of song should sound like. And I mean, that can be a great exercise in like sound design and sure in making music. But I feel like as soon as you put yourself, and if you put yourself in the same box over and over, maybe you want to put yourself in a box for creative purposes once in a while, to see what different things you come up with. But I think if you put yourself in an idea box straight at the start, and always the same one. If you say, I want to make an electro track that sounds very much electro, I'm going to make some really cool sounding tracks maybe, but I think I could explore my creative side more if I didn't think that way.
Do you think there's any risk involved, creative risk in
sure.
sticking to it?
Sure. Yeah, I guess a lot of people are afraid of creative risks. But that's fine. I mean, making music is just like it's not a competition, it's just like a pastime. Really, I mean, you can make a career out of it and all that stuff, but it's just something to do with your time. And it's just about, I enjoy it a lot when I've got something like a banger. It's just, if I really wanted, if that would, if I just wanted to make techno that's very kind of classic techno something, and that would make me happy, then I would do that. For sure.
So do you think maybe conventions might be, for some people, a good indication of creative risk, when to take the risk and when to not? Or do you think they're maybe an indication of maybe what works?
Yeah, maybe it's also great to like try to make tracks from many different genres to like learn the rules before you learn to break them, or so to speak. Yeah. But I mean, a lot of like my favorite tracks, if I were to try to describe them with genres, I would always have to use a few or a few labels to do that. And I feel like you know, I think that's maybe the sound of the future. Just you mix up the past. I mean, I think that's kind of always how it goes, right?
Yeah. And so one other thing that I was maybe interested in was, do you make music other than the stuff that you release as Volruptus?
I mean, I make tracks I don't release also, but no. I mean, yes, not solo though. I do in with project, and I have made music with lots of people that's never been released, which hopefully will be released. Yeah, I've made a lot of tracks with my friend Cosmodot, and I made some track with also him and Jadzia, and yeah, I worked a bit with Kuldaboli, and those tracks have never been released.
One thing that maybe might come to mind, and maybe where electro could go in the future or in different ways, would be from maybe other genres. I asked you, did you make any music aside from Volruptus, for a reason, because I thought maybe, is there any elements that say we can incorporate from electro into other compositional traits in other music and still tie it together as electro in the same way?
Yeah, sure. Like, and you hear it all the time. You hear this like old school hardcore rave stabs appear in electro tracks, and they're still electro tracks, and you hear a lot of influences from other music in electro and vice versa. Yeah, I guess the term is just mostly used now to describe like you know, it's made synth sounds for the most part, and like a drum pattern that's, but you know, let's say, you know, electro starts off like 120, 130 BPM, but if I make a track that technically is electro, but I just play it really, really fast, should I still call it electro? But does it really matter, you know, what we call it? And I like, you know, I often say, you know, fast electro. This 150, 160 BPM stuff that's happening, 100, you know, because I feel like it's got very different, like, you know, it works differently on the dance floor and so on, and
it's good stuff.
But I guess it's just like, I think it's a good thing though, like electro. I mean, it is a label, it is a box, but it is a really big one, and I think that's really good. It is a really like broad genre, I guess. I think a lot of things fall into that, just not without trying necessarily.
Is the maybe niche, not always agreeable aesthetic of electro part of like the identity or the integrity of the genre? Is taking maybe some of that away, then maybe?
Yeah, I think we should like, at least in my opinion, shouldn't just get too hung up on genres, especially now when like, you know, most of the tunes ever released are at your fingertips, you know. So I mean, I guess it's good to like, you know, if you I wanna listen to this kind of song right now, you know, and I could go under, you know, some directory, electro, have some, like, it's like making, but people make playlists now, and you know, I think, I guess a lot of people really like certain genres, but I think people more and more now like just songs. They either like the song or not, and might not latch on too hard on a single genre as much as people used to. I mean, or for not as long, maybe, also. I might switch over to like, oh, now I'm really into that genre. I used to do as a teenager. I would just listen only to, you know, one type of music, and then a few months later I would only listen to something else. And because there was just too much to, you know, so many options. But you know, And I definitely did that for a very long time with like anything electro. If it was decent, I liked it, and I still do. But I think at some point I now I have a more balanced diet of breakbeat, electro, and techno, and so on and so on, and different stuff. But yeah.
Cool. So I suppose we should probably finish up. I'd like to maybe just give you a moment if you wanted to say anything, if you have anything coming up over the next few months or whatever.
Yeah. Not much right now. Not that I know. Hopefully something pop up soon. As the situation seems to be better and better by the day now, at least here in Europe. But yeah, I'm planning on a few releases. I've already finished a bunch of tracks during lockdown. So yeah, I don't really know exactly what's on the horizon, but something.
A more general question to you, where do you see yourself maybe in 5 or 10 years? Do you have any particular aspirations in the future, maybe within music or outside of music?
I just want to release more stuff and get better and better at what I do. Yeah, that's just my goal.
Simple priorities.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to conclude here. I hope it was accessible to most people, while it may have been slightly technical at points. If there is anything you're unsure about, feel free to reach out to me. As I said, my details will be in the description. Also, some links to both Volruptus's work and the overall concept of this interview will be in the description as well for anyone who needs to see. And I think that is it.